Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. My name is Francois Strydom. I am the Senior Director for the Centre for Teaching and Learning at the University of the Free State, and it's indeed a great privilege for me to share some perspectives at this fourth seminar or webinar by the Department of Higher Education and Training and other stakeholders, focusing on flexible and blended learning and teaching practices in post-secondary education and training. I am going to jump straight into the presentation. I'll be guiding my presentations with slides, and I'm looking forward to hearing some questions from you towards the end. Right. So the title of my presentation is the relationship between students and learning materials during the emergency response to COVID-19. I'm sharing with you data from this SALUM, as we've been calling it since the study started. It's the Student Access to and Use of Learning Materials Survey. Right. So to start us off, just to give you a bit of a timeline, Department of Higher Education and Training, Dr. Lewin and Dr. Green contacted us to conduct this study that had two research questions in mind. To what extent are students able to access and use different forms of materials, and in what ways, if any, did students' access and use of learning materials differ before and after the national lockdown? There was also a particular focus on NSFAS students. We developed the survey in consultation with various stakeholders. You see DHET, CHE, USAF there, and also inputs from representatives of 10 institutions that are part of the SASSI network, the student or South African Survey for Student Engagement, which we lead. And that workshop took place on the 30th of April 2020. We had 24 of the 26 institutions in the country participating. There you can see close to 49,000 students and about roughly 3,700 pages of qualitative data. We analyzed the data using SPSS and the qualitative data, making use of thematic, inductive, and deductive analyses using text algorithms. In terms of the sample, you can see that we had quite a good representation of the sector in terms of typology, different types of universities, universities from formerly advantaged and historically disadvantaged institutions, and also a good representation from UNISA. I'm not going to give you a lot of demographics. I want to focus on the learning materials and also the online learning parts of the data. So in terms of learning materials, we did ask questions around textbooks, but we want to particularly focus on how students access their learning materials. And you can see the blue bars here represents students' access before the end of March. You can see in the first column a lot of reliance on copies from the lecturer and the university, but you can also then see after or during remote learning a lot of use in the LMS. We snuck in a question to see which students used less legal means of obtaining materials, torrent and file share. Of course, we can't draw direct conclusions there. Downloading materials, open access materials, and students who used materials from before lockdown. In terms of access to devices, data, and connectivity, it's of course now very well established that access to devices, data, and connectivity is a huge challenge and is summarized by the term of the digital divide in our context. This data shows you that a significant percentage of NSFAS students had a laptop that they could use for their studies, but a very large percentage did not. And our non-NSFAS students had more access to laptops. 90% roughly of all students have a smartphone, which is internet enabled, of course. Only 4% in total of the students did not have access to an internet enabled device. That 6% difference was students who indicated that they could gain access via their family to these devices. But nonetheless, very clear that how the majority of our students were able to study relied a lot on their digital device, and in this case, a smartphone, which is obviously less than ideal. In terms of data, you can see that NSFAS makes a significant difference in enabling our students to buy data. You can also see in the middle there a significant percentage of students getting access through university data portals. But also that our NSFAS students might use more or roughly the same or a little bit more actually of hotspots than other students. So how did students engage with educational technology? Some very interesting findings here. So if we look firstly at the environment in which students needed to engage, you can see here that although NSFAS helps NSFAS funding helps our NSFAS students a lot, our non-NSFAS students were still more able to charge their electronic devices. The non-NSFAS students had a quieter place to study and had better connectivity. So NSFAS makes a big difference, but the learning environments in which our NSFAS students are do tend to problematize their ability to learn. Hence, we've seen a lot of requests, and I can speak from the University of the Free State perspective, a lot of students wanting to come back to campus to make use of the infrastructure and to have a more conducive environment to study. In terms of what kind of online activities students engaged with, you can see submitting assignments, downloading learning materials, writing tests, emailing, accessing their learning materials, chatting with classmates, taking tests. So if you can see here, quizzes, writing tests, and submitting assignments. So a lot of emphasis on assessment during 2020. And of course, this is not surprising, since assessment is the driver of quality and also an indication of whether students are active in learning. It is the way we determine that and report it to DHET. Our students were also realistic in our assessment of the skills that they need. You can see the high percentages there, students needing skills of how to make use of the library resources online, how to engage ethically with academic material. This relates specifically to students' concerns around plagiarism, basic skills for people in the world of work, skills in Microsoft Office, internet searches, skills to work with software, how to navigate ebooks and e-textbooks. So you can see here a significant demand for digital skills to be able to learn online. So having given you some quantitative data, I want to focus on the qualitative data, and this relates specifically to the benefits and the challenges that students reported during this time. So in terms of benefits, you can see that students realized that they could adapt and they were motivated. Some of them were able to connect and have data on devices. But I'm going to focus more on the red items here. Students reported a better understanding of content. They were more focused. They were able to use other resources like the Khan Academy, YouTube, And also academics put more materials for students online so that they could understand the content. The much talked about improvement in performance that we see across many institutions now. Students felt that assessments were clearer, and some of them got feedback more timeously. Very interestingly, number 8, engagement with lecturers and peers. Students reported that I would have never imagined being able to email my lecturer, and I reached out to my fellow students much more online than I would have if we were in face-to-face. And then number 11, students saying that they realized that they could study independent and be more self-directed in their studying. So here's 2 quotes. There is a lot more access to learning materials, and it is extremely beneficial to have recorded lectures, which I can refer back to and rewatch if something is unclear. This is a global finding, but especially you can imagine in South Africa, where for the majority of students, English is a second or third language, or even a fourth language. The ability to stop somebody and rewind and re-listen is a very big benefit. The next quote, I feel it's easier as I usually had to take 4 buses to get to university and back home. Sometimes I had to do that to attend just one lecture, whereas the info or the lecture could have been live streamed and I could have actively taken part from home. So clearly illustrating that some very valuable lessons for our students here. In terms of challenges, I'm going to focus on the red ones. We've talked about skills and competencies and environments and so on. So the terrifying threesome of network, data, and devices, the infrastructure, incredibly important for us if this is going to become part of our new normal. Then number 11 relates to lecturers and lectures communication. So one student summarized it very well, indicating that lecturers that were good lecturers before lockdown were good lecturers after lockdown. Some lecturers were not good at communicating, and their lectures weren't well organized because before lockdown they were also not. It was also a challenge for several or many students that the assessments initially that was put online did not have clear instructions, and they did not receive feedback timeously. I think number 15 is particularly important, which relates to the intersections of these challenges. So if you didn't have network data or device, you were more inclined to misunderstand your lecturer, but you were also more inclined to develop mental health challenges due to the stress and anxiety and uncertainty that you're experiencing. Some quotes to relay or emphasize these challenges. It's very challenging and frustrating at times when you don't know how to use technology. The second one, sometimes family does not understand that we have to study. They call us while in the middle of a test to go and fetch water, and they wanted the money we use for bundles for us to buy food or to pay for something. So the digital divide is certainly very real if we look at these data. Reflecting on this data, we then went on to suggest some implications for the sector. So the first one, implication or recommendation, is that basic learning infrastructure is critical. We need to ensure that all staff and students have access to basic learning infrastructure. That means appropriate devices, data, and connectivity. And this also does count for a percentage of staff. We're currently busy with a study of staff's perceptions, which we're doing in collaboration with CHE and USAF. A more flexible learning environment that incorporates more technology in teaching and learning will become the norm. We can very clearly see that through our experience of 2021, and is definitely part of many of the conversations. For us to be successful, however, students, and particularly students from lower socioeconomic circumstances, need to support or be supported not only with the basic learning infrastructure, but we also talk about the skills. If we don't provide this infrastructure, the digital divide is going to make inequality even worse for us. In terms of digital skills development, that needs to be prioritized institutionally and nationally. If we are going to go into a blended or flexible teaching and learning model, students need to be able to do effective searches. They need to be able to differentiate between academic and non-academic knowledge, and also how to ethically engage with academic content. The principles of connectivism is here very helpful. All institutions should develop digital skills of students, namely information and media literacy, linked to academic literacy, and this is, of course, linked to the development of graduate attributes to create the citizens we need for the future of our country in a 21st century world. Academic staff need to be trained on how to incorporate educational technology as part of their pedagogy. So the question that we've raised with the sector when we've presented these results is we've asked people, how has 2020, and I can add 2021, they now changed our assumptions about how our students learn? At the very least, we need to massively invest in training learning designers to enable us to create very innovative blends of pedagogy and technology. The third one is flexible content delivery platform or platforms. We need to consider developing or investing in flexible content delivery platforms that would make textbooks, institutionally developed materials, and OERs more accessible to everybody. By doing this, we would create much greater equity than before the pandemic, because we all know that many students opted not to buy textbooks and were therefore at a disadvantage. This flexible platform needs to be built on universal design principles that would include students with disabilities. It needs to allow us to integrate the materials on this flexible platform with our learning management systems. And as I indicated, this would help create more equitable access to materials for NSFAS as well as missing middle students, since most of the providers that have these platforms offer access to 5-6 textbooks at a fraction of the cost. This platform will finally enable South Africa to claim that our students can learn in different ways at different times from different sources in different spaces. A way to create even more cost-effective delivery of such platform or development of such platform is to have a collective bargaining approach or shared services solution, which can be led by DET, USAF, CHE, or all of them together, so we can get this greater equity and better quality in our system. Enhancing financial aid, it was very evident to us that NSFAS funding does help students to buy devices and data, and that this support has to continue, but that we have to find innovative solutions for the missing middle students to ensure that they can participate in learning and teaching. NSFAS policy, we suggest, needs to very strongly provide guidance around how learning material allowances should be used, and that that should be used for a laptop, maybe combined with an annual data bundle, plus access to your learning materials. We are very aware at the University of the Free State, but also for DET, the uptake of laptops have been low, and I think there needs to be some very careful and conversations regarding this. Our conversations have showed that our students and even their parents are not aware that a laptop has become a necessity and that there needs to be an educational process around this to ensure that students and their parents understand that certainly in a post-COVID world, digital literacy is not enough. You need to be digitally fluent to be employable. We suggest here that greater guidance from DET can help alleviate the very difficult choices students are forced to make between the tools they need to study and meeting the socioeconomic challenges of their families, as that one quote illustrated for us. It's also very important that the efforts to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of NSFAS payment systems need to be continued and strengthened, as students mentioned late payments as being a challenge. We also thought that we should use this crisis to reimagine learning and teaching. Students and institutions have learned valuable lessons in 2020 and 2021 about the benefits that the infusion of technology with pedagogy can create. But it will mean that we need to grab this opportunity to redefine academics' roles as teachers, greater recognition for how much effort it takes to create proper teaching and learning. Our institutions need to be responsive, and our students can and need to become more self-reliant and independent learners. Some of the questions that students' responses have raised for us is, should a new teaching and learning environment be used to raise the bar? I'm not proposing for a second that we have a pandemic that traumatizes people into changing, which has happened for most learners, but certainly our students have been nothing short of inspirational in their responses to learning and engaging with learning, definitely at the University of the Free State. And likewise, our staff have been phenomenal in their commitment to help and support our students to be successful in the academic year. I think the pandemic has helped both staff and students to get a much richer understanding of students' context, and deeply confronted both students and staff's assumptions about each other. The sixth and final point, I think this is an opportunity for us to reconceptualize subsidy assumptions and quality assurance. How we're going to define contact distance and online in a new normal is a very big challenge, because I think that line is now forever blurred or intertwined. I also think our quality assurance approaches need to become more sophisticated to demand more regarding flexible learning and teaching approaches. Our academic staff play a central role in creating this teaching and learning environments. Therefore, it's important to invest in research that understand their experience, the research that we're conducting in this year, but also that we help reconceptualize what it means to be an academic, and that we embrace this, as Trudy van Wyk said in one conference where I spoke, a fast closing window of creating a not only new but better normal. Thank you very much. With those slides, I hope I stimulated, I think it confirms a lot of things which we know as colleagues that have transpired since March last year. For me, it's a very exciting time to think about new ways of approaching learning and teaching. It does provide us with a unique opportunity to leapfrog. I was listening to conversations of some American colleagues. They're certainly struggling with some of the very same issues. But are we going to make the most of this opportunity to address many of the ills that face us? And I think that's the challenge that lies ahead of us. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, are you happy?
I'm happy. Are you happy?
Happy is a philosophical issue. No, I'm fine.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so we will do some edits just to add some event branding, etc. But yeah, thank you for taking the time to do this for us. And I will be communicating with you in due course. So we will set up a WhatsApp group for the speakers. It will just be valid for one day, that all the speakers in one group, should you experience any challenges on the day, you can communicate so we can be able to assist you. For the fact that we're not in the same place, you know. And then soon after you're done with the webinar, we delete that group. So we don't want to bog you down with all sorts of, you know, chit chat. Yeah, if you don't have any questions for us, I think we're happy to wrap.
Thank you very much for your time and have a good day.
And you, thank you.